Why does it have direction?
Why does time have direction? Well,
Yeah.
time doesn't have direction because, a one-way sign has direction. You've seen a one-way sign on the street and you say, oh, it's got a direction, it's facing that way. Or you have a sign that says, the city of New York is in that direction. And we all understand that's a direction. Why? Because there's a sign that points in one direction. And I can take a needle and say, look, it's pointing in a certain direction. And you can understand it because the needle is a physical object. Now, what do we do with time? Well, what can I show you? What direction does time have? Does it flow in that direction, in the other direction? Which way does time flow or point, or which way is it oriented?
It goes up.
Yeah, maybe it goes up for all we know, down. I don't know which way time goes because time is not a physical object, so it's irrational to talk about direction of time. And mathematicians use the word forward, but forward is not a direction. And I can prove that very easily to you, and I'll prove it. This is a proof, okay? So please take my word for it. Your forward, who's facing me, is different than my forward, which is facing you. So whose forward is correct here? I mean, we all have our own forwards, right? And the Chinese are on the other side of the planet. Their forward is a little different than our forward. And this is the problem. The problem is that we can't talk about the forward as being a direction. It's not. Forward is not a direction. Okay.
Well, what is a direction? How do you
Right.
how do you
Direction
define it?
is if you direction. I do define that. Do I? No, I don't remember defining that. I'll have to think
Because
of.
forward is a direction.
No, it's not because again, forward is whose direction.
Yeah, there's many forwards. Still is a direction.
Okay, but you can do it in terms of an object. Like if a chair is moving forward, you say, well, what is the direction of the chair?
Yeah.
But how do you do that with time? I mean, what do you mean by forward direction of time? And again, when you get concepts, that's when it becomes, the wording becomes
Yeah,
blurry.
you can't give direction to a concept. You can't say love is going up. Like,
Yeah, in other words, what I was trying to say is that forward is not a direction when you use a concept. When you use an object like table, you're pushing and you're saying, or the car is going forward, and you say, what is the direction of the car? Well, it's moving forward. My hand is now moving in direction forward. And again, you have to clarify what that direction is because again, your forward is different than my forward. So
I guess the direction of movement would be.
And yeah, but
we call it that.
right. But then for movement, you need an object. But now for time, you can't talk about the direction of time, but you can you can talk about, a person moving, but moving not through
Yeah.
time or in the direction of time or in the direction of the future because there is no such direction. It's not direction as I see it is a point in the distance, like the moon.
Mhm.
I'm trying to get to the moon. So to me, going to the moon is the direction in which I'm going. I'm saying that's where I'm going. That's the direction in which I'm going to that object over there.
Moonwards.
Yeah, but how do you do this with a concept? It's like saying,
Yeah.
I'm going to move in the direction of information. And what does that mean?
Yeah.
Or the information moves in a given
That's a good
direction.
point.
What does
But
that
that's-
mean?
but that's a good point because objects have location and concepts do not.
Right.
So you can assign a direction to or from, in the case of forward,
Yeah.
to or from an object, but you can't really assign a direction to something that has no location.
Yeah. In fact, there's my first action item. I'm not sure I've ever defined the word direction. I never found the need for it, I think. But I'll have to look through my notes. I'm not sure now. So my son stumped me on the first one, okay? That's his job. His job is to make me look ridiculous
That's
here.
1-0.
Yeah, I'm not sure about direction. I think I defined it, but I'm not quite sure now. Okay, folks, there'll be a little bit of out of focus, which we can't fix right now. I have no idea why it went out of focus. Okay. No, it won't adjust. Okay, anyways, I'm going to start with where we left off yesterday. We had three issues brought up yesterday. One was about life. The other one was about entropy. And I'll be addressing those issues in the next couple days. Today I wanted to address the third one, which was really the first one that was mentioned, which was the issue of direction. What is direction, and whether forward is a direction? Okay? And let me start with how the question started. And I think it was put by Thomas. And, or he clarified, I guess that's what he did. He clarified that in WGD. Man, I have no idea why it goes out of focus. You can see the sign well, right? The sign?
Mm-hmm.
Sign comes out right, but I come out wrong. Okay?
You're blurry.
Yeah, I'm blurry. And I get closer. Let's see.
Forget about it.
Yeah, but it's
We don't have to
a
see your
major problem.
pores.
It's a major problem. Anyways, he said that in Why God Doesn't Exist, the book, he thought that he found this definition in the book, and it says direction, a course over which something moves or points. I checked today, and there is no definition of direction in all of Why God Doesn't Exist.
That's the
WGD.
definition on dictionary.com.
Yeah, I would think that's
a
a
course
definition.
along which something or someone moves.
Yeah, that's not my definition. In fact, it turns out that I do have a definition, but it's not in the book. It's in the website, and I'll get to that in a minute. First, I want to put up here. Let me take this one out, and let's see if we can put the formal definition that we have today, so that we can get this started. And the first one I want to take out, rub it out, because it's got nothing to do with physics. It's really a philosophical issue, but it's the definition I found is a line of thought or action or a tendency or inclination. The direction, and it gives that example, the direction of contemporary thought. So that's an abstract definition of direction.
Like
that's
like saying what direction is Hollywood going?
Yeah, what direction is the country going? That
Yeah,
kind of thing.
like
So we're not referring to that. We're referring to physical direction. Okay, and so for objects, when we're dealing with physics, the formal definition, in fact, it comes. The first thing that I found was, what does direction mean? It comes from French word, and that means arranging in line or in a line, straightening. And the formal definition you'll find is the line along which anything lies, faces, moves, etc., with reference to the point or region toward which it is directed. Direction, directed. And it gives an example. The storm moved in a northerly direction. Okay? So what does this give us? It tells us one thing. It needs, if you read there between the lines, you'll find you need a target. Okay? Let me read that again. It says, with reference to the point or region toward which it is directed. So you do need a target, okay, for the word direction. And I'm going to disagree with part of this definition, and it's in the word moves. Why? Because direction, I'm going to argue, is a static concept.
Like if I'm facing north?
Yeah, you
I'm
can
not
talk
moving.
about facing, pointing, but not about moving. Okay? Okay, so let's go with the definition that I've got here. It's so hard to get these things sometimes. This is the one I have in, I don't have a definition in Why God Doesn't Exist, but I do have this statement. I say direction, for its part, is conceptually made, quotations there, of a single piece. Okay? Keep that in mind. And I say that is, it is continuous. It's made of a single piece and it's continuous. Okay? Conceptually. That's what we mean by direction. In physics, it is considered irrational to attempt to chop direction into points or numbers as they do in math. You don't chop direction into pieces, and you don't segment it. Okay? Magnitude belongs exclusively to mathematics. Direction belongs exclusively to physics. The magnitude of mathematics is irreconcilable with the direction of physics because magnitude is a segmented concept.
It's how many dots we have in a row, or what is magnitude exactly?
Yeah, magnitude, you're talking about numbers. So you're talking about number 5, the number 6. It could be followed by units. But the point is, we're talking about number lines. We're not talking about. See, this all comes with in relation to the word dimension, the word coordinate, and the word vector. That's what's behind all this. That's the context. So we're saying, what is a dimension? Well, we say that a dimension has only 2 properties, and that's direction and orthogonality. You need no numbers for what I just said. All you need is, these are qualitative concepts. So you say, what is a dimension? It has direction and orthogonality with respect to the other 2 dimensions. And the same for coordinates, by the way. And I'll get to vectors in a second. But the point here is, I just want to get this thought through. This is the only thing that I mention essentially with respect to direction in Why God Doesn't Exist in the book. And that is that it's not a segmented concept. You cannot chop direction in half. It makes no sense. Direction is made of a single piece, and it's continuous, so it's not chopped into parts. And so we have a problem when the mathematicians say, we have a dimension which has 2 properties, and one of them is magnitude and the other one is direction. Those 2 concepts are irreconcilable.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So if you ask for directions, like the normal word directions, if you ask
everyday
for
word, let's make that clear.
Yeah, everyday word. If you ask for the directions to so and so street, when someone says go north 50 steps, the north part is the direction and the 50 steps part is the magnitude.
And not even that is correct. And I'll get to that.
What's going on there?
What's wrong is north is not a physical object, and I'm saying in order for you to have direction, you need a physical object.
So
and I'll get into that in a minute.
So you're saying that person didn't give a direction.
Not a scientific one.
Okay.
It's in ordinary speech. And again, we're going to contrast here ordinary speech versus scientific language. If we want to be See, this all starts here, and maybe that should have been my introduction. When you're starting physics, when you're going to do science, you're going to need to define the fundamental words, the ones that you're going to need to create your foundation of physics. And, one of those first words is object. You can't do physics without an object. Another one is location. You're going to need location. You're going to need to know what direction, a distance is between 2 objects. You have to define these crucial words, because otherwise, anything you say beyond that is going to be a problem. You're going to be founding your whole theory, your whole explanation on quicksand. You don't have solid foundations. Like in a building, you build it, in the mud. Well, the first mudslide, there goes your building. Why? Because you didn't put the proper foundations underneath it. And the same thing is for physics and science, but specifically physics. You need to define these words in order to do physics. And one of them is direction. It is direction. And the problem that you run into again is when you apply these concepts to dimension, coordinates, and vectors, and you haven't defined what direction really is, okay? And then you say, well, a dimension has direction and magnitude. And that's what it doesn't have, because you can't have magnitude with direction, direction with magnitude. They're
mutually
contrary concepts. You can have direction and orthogonality, but you cannot have direction and magnitude, which is what this is how these people define dimension. Okay? And so let's get to that next point here, which is...
Why can't you have direction and magnitude?
Why can't you have direction and magnitude? Because magnitude is a chopped up concept. What you're doing to direction by including in that line, you're including magnitude, you're chopping up direction. Direction.
Oh, what's the problem with that?
Well, you can't, because direction can't be chopped. I just said, you can't chop direction in half. You can't chop it into pieces.
What problems do you run into if you do?
It's that direction is made of a single piece. That's why we have to define what direction is before we can go in there and say, look, we're going to mix it with magnitude. Let's get the concepts right before we mix them, because it's easy to say, well, you know, a dimension has two properties, direction and magnitude. And you say, well, did you think about that deep enough to make sure that you can reconcile these two concepts? What I'm saying, you cannot, and I'm going to get into that, so hopefully I'll answer the question eventually. But what I'm saying is we cannot reconcile direction with magnitude. One is a segmented concept, the other one is a continuous concept made of a single piece. Okay. So here I have, where was it? Okay, was this the one? Okay, that's the one I just did. They're so difficult to find here sometimes, and get to the next one, 104. What are a couple of the problems that I see with direction as we have it now? Direction is a concept, and a concept invokes two objects. You need to. Huh?
Now it's back. Oh, never mind.
What's happened?
Never mind.
The blurriness?
It's back.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, it's not the blurriness. Never mind.
No? What was it?
It was the picture went out and went back in.
Oh, I see. Direction is a concept, and as I define the word concept, concept requires two objects, okay? It's a relation between two objects. That's what a concept is. Direction involves a starting point and an end point. The important part here is the end point, and that's what we forget, especially when we get into the word forward. I'm going to get that to that in a second. And then direction is a static concept, okay? It's not something that is in motion. And why do I raise that issue? I raise that issue because in physics we have the word vector. And vector is a dynamic concept. In fact, here's the definition in the Wikipedia, or one of the definitions, is a concept characterized by magnitude and direction, okay? And it says immediately after that, a vector is what is needed to carry, quotations, carry, the point A to point B, to the point B. Okay, so you're moving something from A to B. That's what a vector is. And it comes from the Latin word vector, meaning carrier. So we're talking about motion. Vector is motion. Dimension and coordinates are static concept, but vector is a dynamic concept. And again, we have a problem because you can't reconcile a dynamic concept like vector with a static concept such as direction. Now, we're used to saying in ordinary speech, yeah, drive in the direction of blah, 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 whatever comes after that, right? And we all understand that, and we say, okay, that sounds rational. It's not rational for the purposes of physics, of rational physics. You cannot say, go to this concept, go to the north. If you're going to move to the moon, towards the moon, or you're going to move towards the tree. You move towards an object. You don't move towards a concept such as west or north or, towards love.
Yeah, but why not?
Because you need, for motion, you move towards an object. You don't move in the direction of, like, parallel to a straight line, because here you're moving rectilinearly and here's a straight line, right? Okay? And the issue here is that you should be moving towards an object. You can't, again, when you move towards an object. Direction is simply pointing, or what's the other word that I was looking for? Pointing or facing an object. You're pointing towards an object in the distance. You're saying that's the direction. Direction refers not to the object in the distance, but to the line that connects the two objects. Whereas when you talk about motion, you're talking about moving towards the object that's in the distance. So these are two different concepts. One is a static concept, the other one is dynamic. And this is where the problem is with the vector. The vector talks about carrying a point A to point B. Okay, one has to do with motion. Let's see if we can clarify it with the next little thing that I've got here.
Oh, you're in focus now. It's
I
We're
keep
back
going.
to normal.
Yeah, I'm in focus or out of
In,
focus?
in.
I don't
We're
know.
good. We're good.
Yeah.
I don't know what took the camera so long.
I have no idea why it goes so. Here's a little video that I made today. Hey, I'm in focus now. I don't know what happened, but yep. Here's a little video. We have a box. It's got yellow on one side. It's got violet on the other. It's moving. Okay? And the guy that's looking at it, he's has his back towards us. He's facing the box. And I guess the question we want to answer, if the box is moving forward. Is it moving forward and backward? And if so, forward and backward with respect to what? Well, if the guy has his back towards us and is facing it in a perpendicular direction, okay, as we would say in ordinary speech, well, if he says the box is moving forward, what is he saying? He's saying he's putting his eyes where the violet section is, or his chest or his face, and he's looking forward from there to infinity. So he's looking perpendicular to his actual line of sight. He's saying, look, if you put your eyes in the violet section, then the box, when it moves towards the right, it's moving forward. And when it moves towards the yellow area in that direction, it's moving backward. That's what we typically say. The box is moving forward and backward. So what are we saying? We're saying that we're putting our eyes, our face, or our mind, if you want, whatever, in that violet box, and we're looking in that direction. We call that one forward, arbitrarily. And backward is because, the back of my head is touching the yellow region, and that's going to be my backward. But see, the guy, he's perpendicular to it. So you're saying, well, hold it. If you're perpendicular to the motion of the box, how can you talk about forward and backward? Shouldn't the box be moving forward and backward parallel to you?
That's what I would understand.
You would understand that. But if I tell someone, look, the box is moving backward and forward, and people would understand it if they're watching the box, they're saying, okay, I understand what you're saying, but it's wrong what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, look, if I put my eyes where the violet section is, then it's moving backward and forward. But from where we stand, it's not moving backward, it's forward, it's moving sideways.
Left and right.
Left and right, or west, east, west. You can use other criteria. My point here is that we have to be careful with the language, because it's so easy to say backward and forward, and we all think we know what we're talking about. We're using ordinary speech. We're not using scientific language. Okay? And let me give you another example here. You're in the South Pole. Okay? In the South Pole, you're lost in the middle of nowhere. All you see around yourself is ice. You don't know exactly where you are. You're near the South Pole somewhere. And you take your telephone and you call control center. Folks, I'm lost. I'm going to go forward. I'm going to walk forward. What do you think the guy understands over the phone? Well, he says, well, if he's facing in this direction, he's going to move in the direction in which he's facing at that moment in time. But you still don't know what forward is, over the phone, because he hasn't given you a reference point. He hasn't given you that object towards which he will be walking. See, if he said instead, look, I don't know where I'm at. There's ice all around. I'm going to walk in the direction of the sun. I'm going to walk towards the sun. Okay? And now you can understand. You're saying, okay, if the sun is towards his west right now at this hour of the day over there in Antarctica, then this guy's east of the sun. He's walking towards the sun. He's going to walk westwards. Now you have a reference point. But you can only talk about westwards, forward, backward, reverse, sidewards, or whatever, only if you give a reference point. If you don't have that referenced object, You can say walking forward over the phone. Nobody's going to understand what you're talking about. I can call my wife over the phone and say, look, I'm moving forward right now. Well, until I tell her what my forward really means, what object I'm using as a reference other than myself, because forward for me just means I'm going in the direction in which I'm facing. But it doesn't give me the point of reference to which I'm going to be walking.
That would be my disagreement, where I would put northeast, south, and west in a different bucket than forward, left, right, and back.
Okay.
Because forward, left, right, and back only needs one object and one face of the object.
Say that slowly. You need what?
With forward, left, back, and right,
Uh-huh.
I don't need any other objects except my face. Forward is in front of my eyes, left and right are to my sides, and back is behind me. While with north, east, south, and west, we're talking about with respect to the earth. So there you do need a separate object. That's why I put those two.
Yeah, but again, if you tell someone over the phone that you're moving forwards, he doesn't have any idea what you're talking about until you tell him.
That's why you don't use the word forward.
No,
in that
but that's
case.
my point. My point that the word forward alone, without a reference point, is not a direction. You need to have a reference point to have a direction. Direction again is a concept. Concept requires two objects. One object could be you, for all we care, but the other has to be the target object. If you don't have that target object, just to say forward gives you the starting point. It doesn't give you the end point. It doesn't give you the target point. That's my argument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is forward alone is not a direction.
But it depends on how you define direction.
And again, I'm going to get to that in a moment here. But my point is that forward alone, like saying backwards or sidewards, only tells you something with respect to me. But it doesn't tell you anything with respect to the endpoint that I need for someone over the phone who's not looking could be able to tell what you mean by that forward, by that backward, or by that sidewards. I'm just giving you a reference with respect to me. I need a second point to determine direction. I need that line. And right now I don't have the line.
Yeah, but hold on.
Yeah.
With forward, for example, if I were to tell you over the phone, there's a box in front of me. I'm gonna move forward. Now you can deduce that I'm gonna hit that box.
Because you mentioned the box.
Yeah, but yeah. I said is in front of me, which is essentially saying if I go forward,
you don't even need to say that. All you need to do is say as long as you use the box as a reference.
Yeah. But
now we have a reference. But
this,
without that box, you don't have a reference.
The box isn't like the sun where you can see it too. You only know that it's in front of me. You don't know where it is on Earth.
Well,
you can't see it.
The point here was that if I'm saying I'm walking towards the sun and I'm in Antarctica, right, and at that point in time the sun shows up on the west or on the north or wherever, then the guy can say, okay, if he's walking towards the sun, he's going to be walking towards the north or to the south or to whatever. Unless I use that sun, if I remove the sun and I'm just saying forward, I have not told them in which the guy has no idea in which direction on the map I'm facing. I could be facing this direction, that direction. He doesn't know. And I'm saying you need that second point, the target point, and that's by definition of the formal definition. Remember the formal definition here, if I can find it again. Where is it? Here. The formal definition right now is that you need, with reference to the point or region toward which it is directed, because direction comes from directed. You have to be directed towards that point, to that object. So you need that end point. You can't just say forward, because forward or backward gives you the starting point. It doesn't give you the target, the end point. That's my argument, okay, on this. You need that end point. That's one issue. And the other one is that, well, I'm going to try to define this as best as I can. And I don't have the definition in the book. I don't even have the word perpendicular defined, which I use to define dimension. And obviously, you could end up defining a lot of these terms. They're not all included in the book, but I do include them in the website. And it's important to know that the website and the book are complementary. one supports the other. So you kind of need to go to both to really get a feel for some of these things. I couldn't put a million definitions in the book either, so it wouldn't have been very practical. But this is the definition that I put in there. Let's see if you like it, and obviously you're welcome to tear it to pieces.
And where?
You'll find it at youstupidrelativist.com, and that's the website. And you'll see at the bottom of the page of the old youstupidrelativist.com, the sarcastic one. At the bottom, you'll see the word glossary. If you touch the glossary, you'll find a lot of the key words that I've defined on the website. Okay, that some of those or a lot of those are not defined in the books. You'll see that. Otherwise, you would have read a book that's just got definitions. And I put the first one, which I didn't like. I read it today, so I didn't like it too much, but I put it in there just to be honest. The mutual facing of two objects. The second one that I put in there, a line of sight between two objects. That one I think pretty much describes, in my opinion, or defines what a direction is. A line of sight between two objects. You have to stretch that string across, the two poles to have direction. And forward just gives you the first pole. That's fine. But you don't know, where that string is going. Why? Because you don't know in what direction you're facing until you put that other pole or whatever you got on the other side. Then now you have that line of sight. You need that. And I added that direction is a property of straight lines and edges, and the word edge is defined both in I think it's in the book as well, but for sure it's in the website. So in general terms, what am I saying? The word forward is not a direction. As I hinted yesterday, I had this gut feeling, but today I studied it a little more, and that's what I concluded. It is not a direction, because forward just gives me the starting point. It does not give me the end point. That's the first one. And keep in mind that the formal definition, not mine, but the one that's used out there, also requires a target. And I'm saying also that you need not only the target, you need the origin and the target. You need both points for it to be a concept. But for direction to have validity, you need also that target. And the word forward doesn't give you that. It doesn't give you that end point. And again, we're talking about scientific definitions. We're talking about definition that we can use consistently. Maybe someone with a better mind can come up with a better definition. But my point is, forward I reject as a direction, and you're welcome to argue against me on this, as my son does. And you'll find these definitions in youstupidrelativist.com, not in the book.